battling the relentlessly negative doom and gloom news media. It's the Nick Stenger Show, coming to you live from the Stenger Family Office headquarters. It's your host, Nick Stenger.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Nick Stenger. We are the Stenger Family Office. Welcome back to the show. Here we are, episode 196, The Failed Experiment. We got Katie the Greek here in the studio. We got Producer O. We're back. We're bigger than ever. And Producer O actually reminded me we're back in the studio. Last week we were on the road. Here we are back live in the studio, and we are amped up. We are energized. We've got two big events coming to you very soon. We've got episode 200, the live podcast, the edition in person, coming up at Francesca's Restaurant in Naperville. Don't miss this thing. If you are thinking about coming to the show, make sure you're registered because we are like 85% sold on this thing, and it's going to be here in a few weeks. August 26th, call Katie the Greek, katie.poulos, Poulos, at StengerFamilyOffice.com, and Katie is also going to put the link to register for this event in the description on YouTube. So if you're thinking about coming, come to episode 200. We're going to thank all of our longtime listeners. Thanks for being with us since the very beginning. We started this podcast during the height of COVID, and we had like 12 people on a Thursday morning at 10 a.m., and here we are today. We are over 700 subscribers now across our different platforms, and so we are asking for your help to get to 1,000. So please subscribe on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, wherever you're watching this. And I will also just remind you, before we jump into the show today, don't forget to come to Investor Day. This is October 16th and 17th, 2025. We always are forward-looking, so we call it 2026 Investor Day, but it is, in fact, in 2025 at Gibson Steakhouse in Oak Brook. This is also linked, as I understand, in the description on YouTube. Sign up. We are almost at 100 people signed up. We've only got capacity for 130, so that's roughly around 14, 15 couples. So if you're planning on coming to this, there's literally only like 14 or 15 spots left. So make sure you get registered. This thing is about to be sold out, and it's only July. Make sure you come to Investor Day. Now, what's the failed experiment? We're going to jump into it here. The failed experiment, and don't take this as a knock on the people of Europe. Our family's European, by the way. We still have lots of family in Europe. This is not a knock against specific people or anything like that, but rather against the failed policies of the EU, the failed policies of specific countries within Europe, like the UK, France, Germany. Germany's been an absolute disaster. It used to be the nation of engineers. Our family is German, so I can say this. The German people used to be big-time innovators, and German GDP now for the past 5 years is only up 8%. What an absolute disaster. The UK in particular, I want to zero in on the UK here for a second, tried to raise capital gains taxes, tried to increase tax rates, cut the deductions that you could take, and less tax revenue was generated as a result. Surprise, surprise. You're thinking, if we raise taxes, aren't we going to generate more tax revenue? The exact opposite has happened in the UK. Why does this happen? Because the UK, sorry to break it to you, does not operate in a vacuum. There are other places that people can go, specifically within other European countries or the U.S. or other places on Earth, and wealthy people in particular, large companies at the margin, it's called in economics, on the margin, can leave the UK and they can go to more favorable tax environments, and that's exactly what's happened for wealthy people in the UK. The UK is projected to lose 16,500 millionaires in 2025. That is a ridiculous number. And for some context, here's an article that came out last July. Britain is likely to lose nearly 1 in 6 millionaire families by 2028. If that was the U.S., that would be like us losing 4 million millionaire households. 4 million. Terrible. That's absolutely a disaster. Think about how many taxes the average millionaire family is going to pay. Making a couple $100,000 in income, they're going to pay 15, 20, 25% tax when you factor in all the extra taxes they pay, property taxes, sales taxes. Maybe they have a company, they have payroll taxes, they're supporting the economy, and you basically chase those people out of your country. Congrats, UK. You absolutely bungled it. I mean, you destroyed your own economy. This was an unforced error that you did not have to do, and this is why the U.S. now, despite our problems, yes, we have issues, yes, it's not perfect, there's plenty of issues like the rising debt, rising deficit, all the rest of it, But for all of our problems, the U.S. now has become a safe haven for entrepreneurship, a safe haven to leave your money down. I was just talking to one of our families who's from the UK, and they're UK residents or UK citizens, but U.S. residents. And the last thing they want to do is die in the UK. Like they're actively trying to get out of the UK as fast as possible. And that's a whole nother problem the UK has, is they tax your estate over around £700,000. They're going to tax it at around 40-50%. Absolutely ridiculous. So if you're a wealthy family in the UK, you're absolutely trying to not die in the UK. And guess what? Same thing happens for wealthy families in Illinois. And so again, just like the UK doesn't operate in a vacuum, even the states within the United States don't operate in a vacuum. So Illinois has come out with these ridiculous state taxes. We also have a 5% state income tax. We have the highest now. Congrats, Illinois. We have the highest property tax in the country. Yes, higher than any other state. And you ask yourself, what in the heck am I paying for? Well, if you break down your taxes in Illinois, most of them go to pensions because we have unfunded liabilities. We have way too many obligations out there. We cannot pay for all the retiree expenses. And so we've had to continue to increase property taxes at their fastest rate. We also have a 5% state tax, which every single year, every single time we have an election in Illinois, it's on the ballot to increase those taxes to a progressive tax and basically turn us into New York or California. And the problem with that is New York is the financial hub of the world. Tons of people are still leaving New York despite it being the financial hub. And I love New York. New York City is awesome. Love visiting, love going there. But they're still losing tons of people. And by the way, we love Illinois too. Our family's here. Our family's been in Naperville for 8 generations. So we love where we're at. But if you take Illinois state taxes and you go to 10, 12, 15% on the higher end of income, now you have a disastrous winter plus disastrous taxes. We are not California. We don't have the sunny weather. We don't have 70 degrees and sunny every single day like San Diego. We don't have the beautiful beaches. We're Illinois, so half the year it's freezing. And so if you do that, what do people do? Well, retirees leave, and that's exactly what you're seeing. You could debate all this. You could say, Nick, you're wrong, and we love big government. We love big taxes. We like to pay taxes. They're so great. Okay, fine. But you can't debate with the net out migration within Illinois, New York, and California, the 3 biggest states for people fleeing. And where are they going? They're going to Texas. They're going to Tennessee. They're going to Florida. They're going to Idaho. They're going to all these places that are more friendly for taxes, for bureaucracy, for regulation, for everything else. And so that's the bedrock of capitalism. That's the bedrock of entrepreneurship is competition. Now, one of the proposals that the EU, surprise, surprise, has thrown out, because this has all come from the EU now, is this idea of a global minimum corporate tax. Now, forget the global minimum corporate tax, which we'll talk about, but let's just back up for a second and talk about what the EU really wants to do with the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, who's that really spooky, scary guy. By the way, got in huge trouble for misappropriating funds. Again, surprise, surprise, the guy who looks like Darth Vader, literally in real life, has misappropriated funds from his organization. If you're surprised by that, you should have just watched our show, because we've been covering this now for 5 years. And you're like, why are you covering it? Because there's literally a group of people out there who want to have a one world government. And you have to understand this. They want to basically remake the world where you're a global citizen. There's no difference between countries. You have a world with no borders. People just go wherever they want. There's no borders, no checks and balances. And what does that ultimately do? It leads to consolidation at the top. So, of course, within a one world government, a place where you just have a global government, and you can do a corporate minimum tax, now you've created an environment where there's absolutely no competition. That's terrible for progress. That's terrible for innovation. That's horrible for entrepreneurship. That's a horrible, horrible environment if you want to make life better. And I would argue it's been capitalism for the past 200, 300 years that's lifted people out of poverty like nothing else we've ever seen. Every time communism's been tried, absolute disaster failure, millions of people die. Every time socialism has been tried, ultimately millions of people die, and it's awful and it's failed. Okay, so capitalism is the bedrock of lifting people out of poverty. If you look at the standard of living of even the lowest class in the U.S. today, they still have a better standard of living than even the richest people used to live back in the 1500s. And so if you're not amazed by that, if you're not astonished by that, you should be, because you don't have the perspective of history and you need to read more. And I would argue that the U.S. and our entrepreneurs have done more for poverty alleviation than any other place on earth, any other country on earth. And the other thing you see too, which is the silver lining of capitalism, is look at the giving pledge. This is all the billionaire families that have committed to giving away most of their net worth during their lifetime to charity. So if you want more charitable giving, if you want better results for people, if you want less people living on $2 a day, which we all do, if you want a cleaner world, if you want cleaner water and all the stuff that we all agree on, which, by the way, I think we can all agree that we want a better place to live. We want people living longer, healthier, all the rest of it. Well, you should believe in capitalism. You should want capitalism at the forefront of that. And so the UK, the EU, they've experimented so heavily with socialism. They've experimented so much with concentrated control. They've ran their economies into the ground. And Germany, Wall Street, this isn't just Nick Stenger saying this, Germany was actually featured within a Wall Street Journal publication about how they've lost their way. They used to be the global manufacturing hub, and they've lost that. Why is that? Stifling regulations, stifling taxes, some of the worst taxes now in the world. It used to be the U.S. We had the highest tax rate for corporations President Trump in 2016, 2017, doing tax alleviation for corporations. We went from 39% to 21%. Now, you can love Trump, you can hate him. I'm not making a political statement, but we went from being the worst environment for companies to do business from a tax standpoint to literally one of the best, all within 6-7 years. Why is it that the U.S. stock market has kicked the pants off of every other European country, every other place on earth? Why is it the U.S. has led the charge of innovation? Why is it that every single brilliant entrepreneur from Europe, every single brilliant entrepreneur from China and Japan and Latin America, why are they all right here on our soil? Because of the rule of law and personal property rights, because of our favorable environment. You've got $30 million as a married couple now that you can pass down to your kids with no tax ramifications. $30 million. I mean, that's absolutely incredible. That doesn't exist anywhere else on earth. So if you're trying to leave a legacy, if you're trying to pass down according to your wishes to your heirs where you want your money to go, the only way you're going to do that is here in the U.S. Why are we thriving? Why are we booming? Why is our stock market at record all-time highs? Why have I believed in this idea of resilient America and continue to tell you stay right here in U.S. companies? Because we have the best soil. We have the best operating environment. We're the New York Yankees of the stock market. And if you sell the U.S., I think you're absolutely out of your mind. You're completely insane. And you should just stay right here in the biggest and best. I'm not saying that we're not going to have a correction. We're not going to have dips and bruises and bumps along the way. But we are the last and best hope. That's the reality. So that's where we're at. Now, this is the funniest thing that's happened in the UK. So remember, they've tried these bad increases with taxes. They've experienced horrible results. So it's kind of like fool me once, well, now, instead of learning their lesson, the UK has gone back. Here's my next slide, producer O. And they're facing, this is May 8th of 2025, they're facing new pressures to hike taxes because their economy's not doing well. Can't somebody go over there and just shake these people and say, cut your taxes, cut your regulations, stop regulating every big tech company out of existence, stop going to all your most successful entrepreneurs and chasing them out of your country. It's not rocket science. That you're not in a vacuum. You don't operate in a world by yourself. You have to cut taxes. You got to cut regulation. You got to make a better environment. You have to make a place that people want to come to. And naturally, over time, when you cut those taxes, tax receipts will go up. That's the Laffer curve. I'm not making any of this up. This is the Laffer curve. This has been well studied. And this has happened the past 6-7 years now since we cut taxes in the U.S. Tax receipts have actually gone up. The government's never collected more tax revenue. So that's the reality of how this is all supposed to work. You're supposed to see a shrink in tax rates, regulation, the shrink in the size of the government. Why? Not no government. I'm not an anarchist. You say, Nick, you don't want any government. Of course I want government. We have to have rules. We have to have laws. I believe government's ordained by God. That's straight out of the Bible, okay? But when it goes too far, when it gets too big and it becomes too burdensome, you stifle innovation. And so if you want to have better standards of living, if you want to have less people struggling and having horrible living standards, you've got to get the size of government smaller. If you don't believe me, look at the past 4 or 5 years with COVID. We've printed 45% more dollars in the economy. As a result, the government has gotten 40 to 50% bigger in size. That is not a good thing. What's happened to the low class, the middle class right now? Absolutely crushed. People without assets have been destroyed the past 4 or 5 years. They can't buy a house. Kids coming out of college can't find a job. You've got low class families. They can't even buy groceries in some cases. I mean, you go to the grocery store now; it's $300 for groceries. You fall out. Like, how is anybody affording this? So, what's been the result of a big government? It's been crushing of the middle class, crushing of the low class. And I'm not going to say this isn't. This is, by the way, this is half of Trump's fault. Trump increased the size of government. He printed a bunch of money. Okay, his Fed did not hold back. And Biden just threw gas on the fire. This is a bipartisan thing. So when you ask me, Nick, are you left or right? I'm going to tell you the answer is neither. I'm conservative. I want smaller government. I want less and less burdensome government on the back of everybody else. And that's 1984. 1984, George Orwell was not a MAGA Republican, just as a reminder here, okay? He was actually kind of like a left guy, left-leaning, but he believed in small government, and he talked about the boot stomping on the face, because it used to be heavy government from the right side of the aisle, and now it's heavy government from the left side of the aisle, and that does not help anybody. So if you are left, right, center, if you are red, blue, purple, whatever you are, you have got to believe in smaller government, because if you want the individual to increase and the government to decrease, you've got to let entrepreneurs thrive. That's the environment that's created all the wealth we have in the U.S. despite our problems. Now, here's all the predictions for 2025 and 2026 for growth. The U.S. is at the top of the pack for developed economies. Look at the disaster in Germany here. Barely 0.1% of growth, and actually they're revising now down. They think Germany could actually contract here in 2025, which would be an absolute disaster. It once was the place of all the innovation, all the technology. France, a little bit better, kind of a disaster. Italy is sort of a disaster. Spain's coming up a little bit. But the U.S. has still been the last and best hope. So stay here, stay invested right here in the biggest and best companies. Not to say there's not good entrepreneurs and good companies out there, but when you've tried this failed experiment and don't learn your lesson, that's the other craziest thing. Like you'd think you'd learn your lesson at a certain point and be like, okay, guys, we got to stop doing this. We got to try the other thing, because even if we're wrong, it can't be as bad as what we're doing now. You would think that would be the end result of what but they're not. They're doubling down on it. So that's why I say stay here in the U.S. You've got the rule of law, you got personal property rights, you got a lot of good things, and the entrepreneurs here are just rocking and rolling. Yes, we're going to have a decline. I've told you we're going to have a correction. August is traditionally a weaker time of the year anyways, so don't be surprised if you give some gain back here in August. But remember, we're up 7-8% for the year. It's only not even, just a little over halfway. So if we post a 10% return, if we get to that 6,700 point zone on the S&P, that's what we said. We went into the year, Stenger Family Office went into 2025 saying we're going to hit 6,700 on the S&P. And we never cut our estimates. We never said that the target should be lower. We never said doom and gloom is on the horizon. We never said the world was coming to an end. And I say, have we gotten one call from anyone saying thank you for not panicking? While you have all these people out there panicking. Literally almost every strategist on Wall Street almost cut their estimates and their forecasts for the S&P. And here you have Stenger Family Office. We didn't cut our estimates. We kept you on your plan. So I'm not trying to pat ourselves on the back too much here. And there's, we got to be humble. We have to stay on the course. We know that bad things can happen and corrections can come. But at the same time, we have not wavered. So when you come to this show every week, when you hear the clarity and confidence, the good news, the data, we're not making this stuff up. We're telling you, we're calling balls and strikes as we see it. We're telling you what we think. We're telling you this is what the data says. It's all driven by data, not narrative. And that's the key difference. So thank you for being on the show. Make sure you subscribe. Come to the show at episode 200 here in a few weeks, and then make sure you come back to Investor Day. It's almost sold out, so if you're thinking about doing it, look in the description there on YouTube and make sure you click register. Thank you for being on. We'll see you next time for 197.